Hey, Chris, so great to see you. We've known each other for a while, and I've always been a fan of your work ethic, and your overall philosophy on music, motivation, and life itself. Tomorrow sees the release of an exciting film, Critical Thinking, directed by your friend and collaborator John Leguizamo. I trust this story resonated strongly with you. Tell us what it's about and what is so special about it.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for having me here. And to my ASCAP family, I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks so much. And that's a great intro, by the way. Can I use that every morning I wake up?
Sure, it's yours.
I could use it. It's a great story. So, as a composer goes through the arc of their careers, we do bigger films, smaller films, and we experience all kinds of emotion with people we work for, with things that you think things are going to be and things that they aren't. And, composers have to deal with a lot of the emotional irregularities in their careers. So when John called me, I've known John for almost 15 years. He acted in a bunch of films where we had a mutual friend, the director Brad Furman, so I got to know John that way. So this script got to John, and John made this film, and I didn't know he was making it. I read something in the trades. I didn't know he was shooting it, and then he calls me up one day. I was actually away, and he goes, "Hey, Hajian, I directed this film. It's really good. I need some great music. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know if I have you, I think we're going to be okay. Can you please do it? Oh, and there's very little money." So, of course, I said yes, because, what an opportunity. And it really it kind of, encompassed everything that I wanted my career to be, to kind of work on great stories with people that have a lot of creative freedom and trust and all that. So, and then when I started to read what the story was about, I thought, like, wow, this is going to be really incredibly stimulating and inspiring.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about the story. It's a true story, as you said.
Yeah. So it's a true story about a high school chess team in 1997 in Miami, in a poor area of Miami. And these were by and large kids that the schools didn't care about. They started this elective chess club, and basically it was ways to keep these kids off the street, because they figured if they weren't in school, they would be doing drugs or doing awful stuff. That's what they felt, which is pretty sad. But luckily, these really bright students are mentored by the chess teacher played by John Leguizamo, Martinez, and he's able to connect with them. He connects with them personally because he was one of them. And this love of chess and the passion is just, it just wins them over. And they were into chess anyway, but now they have someone who's like talking like they do, and who's also laying down some real school, history about their race and their culture in America, and, how chess can be this thing that, like, where there's no divide, where it's the great equalizer, and that's what they say. So I was very, very captivated about the human aspect of the story. Then, to learn about how much of the film would be scored, how much of the scoring would require chess tournaments, I was like starting to look at this, and I was like, wow, because in competitive films or sports films, there's
Right.
always that ramp up. That's kind of a thing where they're kind of working their way up through it. And I remember Jamie Kirkpatrick, who was a phenomenal film editor, who I worked really closely with, and that was another wonderful aspect of this film. When the composer and editor can work like that, it's
Right.
everything. He looked at those. He says, we have like 4 tournaments, and like a big part of this landing emotionally is going to be how the music and the editing and all this works together. So I started to work early, and I really wanted to find that right balance, because I need to heighten the emotion, but I certainly don't want to like smother this really indie film
Right.
with big syrupy, over the top, sports kind of triumphant music. So I had to find that line, and it was challenging, and I love doing it because my temperament generally is to be kind of internal, and chess is so about what's going on in the mind. So that's what I kind of kept in my own creative spirit through the whole thing. It's like, how can I get into this, in the minds of what these players are really doing, how
Right.
their minds are moving so quickly, the moves and all that stuff, the frenetic pace.
Right. So the title is Critical Thinking. How does that relate to the pursuit of any goal or anything that you're striving for? whether it's musically or otherwise.
Yeah, it is exactly. Critical thinking is a phrase not only reserved for chess, but it's when your mind is working to solve problems like that. And I think it applies to music. I think it applies to almost anything that you want to do well. But that type of figuring out problems and thinking ahead, and I think composers do that. I think almost all artists do that. So that's what I kept stayed in touch with for me. But then I was like, how do I, as a composer, how do I get the audience into the mind? Because it's one thing to like if I was to score a big triumphant sports film and they win the final thing, that's great.
Right.
You can fill the screen and you get it, and everyone's going to want that. But how do I, in a small little regional tournament where they're on like rinky-dink tables, but
That's a
still,
challenge,
but still get it so that the audience gets in there and goes, oh my God, yeah, these kids are going to be good, and I see what's going on. And Eric, the other part of that is, composers are storytellers ultimately. That's what we do first. And it was so important for John and the cast. They were so authentic to the chess because they really wanted people that, chess was their lives, to see this and go and honor it, and that was important. And then to see, Latin and African American students embrace that is just something we need more of right now, right? Anyway, because it's something that we normally think is reserved for prep school and that. So that needed to be authentic. So for me, I wanted to honor all that and make sure that the intellectual aspect was always, forefront in my score.
Right. So having known John for as long as you have, I read that this story had been, people wanted to tell this story for a while now, but John was the one who actually took it, under his wing and shepherded it. Why was he such a perfect person to bring this to life?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the producers could answer that even better, but I know that Carla Berkowitz, one of the producers, had optioned this story, I think maybe 20 years ago, or a while, and she had been trying to get it made, and it's a real, it's a real honor to see producers so behind something that they just don't quit. And then with the other producers, they got it to John, I believe, through. I'm trying to think of how. Anyway, the script got to John, and he was into it. And I think they originally thought of going with some other more known directors.
Right.
But then I think as John connected with the story, they started to realize how John's energy with these young actors could be a thing in itself. And that's really what comes through in this film, is this loose energy. It almost feels all improv, and it's not. It's scripted, but that they also go off script, but in a way that it's not a mess. It's all rooted by John leading these actors and saying, "Come on, guys, you're safe here. Let's go. We're gonna have some fun here."
Right.
And I think once they talked to John and knowing the way John performs and what his aesthetic is about, they were convinced that even though John, it was his first directorial film, that he would bring some intangibles to it that a standard director would not. And they were right.
Right. As a composer, that must be such a joy to have someone with energy and a vision and something you could feed off of. So I mean, he's many things. He's a stand-up. He's an actor, a producer. He also seems like a very musical soul. So in terms of your musical conversation with him, how did that go?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that, because for composers, that connection with the filmmaker is everything. John is a salt-of-the-earth person. He's generous, he's trusting, and his instincts are above all so good. And even if he doesn't know how to explain something, he trusted me enough, and I saw this with other people in the film, to say, okay, and he just explains what he wants from a dramatic purpose, from an emotional point of view, and he's not into micromanaging, but he knows what he wants. He knows when it feels right. And for John, music is needs to feel like it's in the DNA of the film. He didn't want it obtrusive, but he knew that when it wasn't there, something was not right. So he would always he was great with checking me, like when it goes too far. And there were a couple of times he brought me back a little bit. And I was like, okay. And then I understood totally what he was going for. So he would, always talk emotion, motivation, but he gave me a lot of freedom. And I was so grateful for that. So that's the thing a composer wants. When you're not afraid to fail, you'll go for something great. And you'll kind of hit on something that you might not ever come across because you're writing from a point of view of trust. And that's what we had. I was very blessed with that.
Right. So we're talking about connection here. With so much uncertainty about schools starting up during this pandemic, what does this story have to teach us about the value of true one-on-one connection, whether it's education or art or anything really?
That's so interesting. I was thinking about it. I think one of the reviews talked about that. They said, we need to see a classroom with students and the teacher not wearing masks in there. When I worked on this film, it was a year ago that we did the film mix, and now obviously we know what's happened in a year. But I think it's going to really be life affirming. I mean, the story is, but I think it's going to make us all feel like, okay, we'll find a way to get back to that because yes, that interaction in the classrooms especially, and all of that is really essential for human existence.
Right.
And part of me is it's kind of funny to watch these scenes now and no one's wearing masks. I'm like, but I hope that it's gonna that's gonna say that's where we're gonna get back to in time. But it really does speak to how human interaction can influence people's lives, and I think that's really important. That's something you feel when you see the film. You feel that.
Right. So, knowing you as much as I've known you, Chris, you're a composer who seems to invest your time and your talent with collaborators and projects that are really meaningful and purposeful. Critical thinking seems like the latest example of that. Why is it so important for you to feel, a personal investment in the work that you do?
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate you saying that. I feel, look, there's so many intangibles in this business, right? And you make some contacts and connections that are they're more functional, whatever. And then you have a chance to make some that are really profound. And I think if you look at composer-director relationships, so many of them are fundamentally started in that initial trust and building that and being in something together. So for critical thinking and some of the other projects I've done, I always feel like, so little about what's going to happen in your career and what will happen to all these projects. But I know that if my name is on a film and I've given everything I've had, both creatively and also as a part of the team, I feel good about myself. That's what I'm here for. I can't control all the other stuff. Oh, the film comes out. It doesn't come out. There's a whole list of things I can't control. But for me, that's the reason I got into this business. I wanted to be, I wanted that back and forth. I wanted to go in and play a cue and have a director say, and see when they get excited, but then have them say, oh, that's cool. Hey, what if we do this here? And then go back and then have that make me look at it a different way. And, I think whenever my career is over, I'll look back and say, I really invested in some of these relationships, and that's really kept me vibrant and alive and optimistic for the next project because that's what I have. That's what I can give.
Well, beautifully said. Well, Chris, it's always a pleasure to see where your musical path has taken you next. Thanks for sharing this story with us. It sounds like a special film, and I hope a lot of people watch it.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks to everyone at ASCAP and Loretta Munoz and everyone in film and TV, and I'm grateful to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you.